and welcome back to the channel. In this episode, we're going to be talking about the football championship. So we had games in 3 of the provinces. This weekend we had Ulster semi-finals, Leinster semi-finals, and a Connacht final. So we always like to give the finals the top bill. So in Connacht, then football championship, Galway 13 points, Mayo 14 points. This was another game where Mayo looked like they maybe had were in a good position, and Galway come back with a rattle, and possibly like in the end, there was a couple of wides near the end, and there was what I'm sure we'll talk about, a controversial taken down or whatever you would call it at the end as a Galway man running through. But so 14 points to 13 for Mayo against Galway. So what did you make of that one, Conor?
Yeah, I thought it was a close game, Gerry. I thought it was even match for a lot of the parts. I think Mayo in the first half with the win were by far the better team, but it didn't really reflect on the scoreboard. There was only 3 points in that, and I think that they kind of allowed Galway to remain in the game, and I think they should have probably killed the game in the first half, Mayo, to be honest with you, when Galway weren't really playing it as well, and it so nearly came back to haunt them. But I suppose at the end of the day, Galway, they wouldn't go away from Mayo, and I think it was a good idea to fist over a score late on. I think they had missed the goal chance a few seconds before that, so Mayo took the points, and I suppose the goal never arrived for Galway. And I suppose, towards the end, your man was taken down, but I think that's where Mayo really, I don't think they're going to care at this stage about whether it's how the manner or how they win the game. And it was a black card, and it's actually a loophole in the rules, Gerry, because if Galway had scored an equalising point, Mayo would have been missing that fella in the sin bin for the first 7 or 8 minutes anyway of extra time. But if your man had gotten a red card or 2 yellow cards, he would have had to sit out the whole of extra time, but Mayo would have been restored to the full contingent of 15 players. So it would have actually been better to get a red card for his sake than get a black card. But look at that. That actually happened in the Kerry match the week before when David Moran missed the first 6 or 7 minutes of injury time with the black card, but they were down to 14. But if he had got a red card, Kerry would have had 15 in that period. But look, I suppose all in all, Mayo, they got the win. They hadn't won a Connacht title in 5 years, so I think it was absolutely huge for them that they did get the win. And it's James Horan's 5th Connacht title. He's won as Mayo manager 4 in a row in his first battle, and now this one. Last year, they were unlucky against Roscommon in the first round to lose that match. But I suppose they won this game by a point. They lost last year by a point. But no, a good performance from Mayo. People are kind of saying they didn't play well, this and that and going. But I think they played okay, Gerry. I think Conor had a good game. Aidan O'Shea was very good. Chris Barrett was very good in the full back line. Matthew Rowan was very good in midfield. I think Mayo, all around the pitch, they played quite well. I think they have an awful lot of positive state in the game, being back in Connacht. I always think that the fact that they didn't win Connacht in other years, even when they lost the Ireland final by a point after replay, the fact they never won Connacht, they made the journey a lot longer for Mayo footballers. And I think that this year, they actually did win a Connacht, and they kind of put out the BS, the messing about it with all the qualifiers or whatever. So I suppose this was do or die for Mayo and Galway. I think Galway really were unlucky, though. They were kind of the benefits of a system that didn't really, or they were really down the people who didn't benefit most from this system, because in the league, I think Galway, with injuries and with COVID, they were missing an awful lot of they played Mayo in the first round of the league, and Mayo backed them very well. And then the Dublin match was a dead rubber game, and then the Sligo match was called off in the semi-final because of COVID. So the preparation, Galway threw no fault of their own, kind of got no preparation there, Gerry. Do you know what I mean? And I just think then, back when the pandemic was before, well, it won't say before it began, but back before the lockdown, back in March, that weekend Galway were meant to play Mayo, and Galway were absolutely odds-on favourites to win that game. They would have been expected to beat Mayo that week, and it didn't look possible Mayo could beat them that weekend. And then by the time the action resumed 7 months later in Intercounty, the tables had turned completely. So look, Pádraig Joyce, I think Gerry Joyce has done a very good job in his first year. They made an awful lot of progress, particularly before the league, before the lockdown even. And since the action resumed, I suppose they wouldn't mind the 2 league matches so much, but they lost by a point in the one championship match they played this year. So I'd say Galway would be very disappointed, because it was definitely a chance for them to get to an All-Ireland final this year that they haven't got to in other years. But an All-Ireland final is definitely there now for Mayo or Cork or Tipperary. One of those 3 teams are going to be in the final now. And I think Mayo, while they haven't, they've had 5, I've always said Mayo had 4 very tough games in contrast to Galway. They had 4 very tough games before this. They had the match against Galway. They had the match against Tyrone. They had the match against Leitrim. They had the match against Roscommon, and then they had the match yesterday against Galway. And all those 5 games were do or die for Mayo. They won 4 of them. They lost to Tyrone, so they got relegated. So I think, Gerry, that if you had said to James Horn at the start of the year that he's a get relegated, but you'd win a Connacht title and be playing Cork or Tipperary for the place in an All-Ireland final, I'd say he would have bit your hand off, to be honest.
Okay, and just before we wrap that game up, just a wee query about it. So basically, obviously, when the black card nowadays, obviously, is the sin bin you go into, and I remember whenever it was first introduced, it was like, was it the player had to be subbed? Is that right? So what do you think of that that rule itself? Like, do you think it was better the original way, or do you think that the sin binning's a better way of working it?
I think, Gerry, that the way they should do it is the same way they do it in ladies football and in rugby, where the sin bin is a great idea, but I think the sin bin the clock should be stopped. They can't have this 10 minutes where a player lies down injured for a few minutes and everything. I think that's a very, very bad way of doing it. I think that if they're going to have to do the sin bin, they're going to have to stop the clock. And I just don't know why. The hooter was voted in twice in Congress, and Central Council overruled it twice because said it wasn't practical to use. So I don't know why they can't have a hooter like that system in the GAA. It would take the pressure off the referee with stoppage time, to be honest with you. And I just think that if you look at it like that, the sin bin, I think that it needs to be changed as well for, I think, a lot of deliberate fouls that aren't necessarily black card offences around the middle of the park, and those fouls aren't really, I think any sort of deliberate foul, even jersey pulls, something that's deliberate should nearly be a sin bin for deliberate foul. I think the sin bin rule, I didn't really think the black card was good the over where you were taken off and someone come on. I think that then that really favoured the bigger teams. I think this is a much better way to have it now, but I suppose people are saying, I think, Gerry, that like they do in the soccer, if a player is fouled like that through on goal, a clear goal scoring opportunity line, it should be a red card, I think, Gerry, to be honest with you. I think that would mean that even if it was a last minute like that, the player would have had a punishment of a suspension for the semi-final now. I think that's the way I think that should be done. I think that for denying a clear goal scoring opportunity with a deliberate foul, the punishment should be a red card. I think it's different maybe if it's not deliberate, but I think a foul like that where there's no attempt for the ball, the man, it was clearly what he was doing, I think that's a red card offence. It should be. I think it's not. I think it should be a red card offence.
One thing I read, and I think it was possibly sour grapes from a Galway fan, but I just thought it was kind of interesting. Obviously, in the camogie, there's 2 points for the sideline cut, and what they were talking about was that in football, for something that was like such a blatant foul, in that situation where like basically Galway were 2 points down, a goal could have won the game. A point gets them to within a point, whereas the free in wasn't really worth anything with the time that was on the clock. So I think this guy was basically saying they should be mega 2 points for a deliberate stab at a goal scoring. But would you have any notion on that? Or
no, I don't think so, Jerry. I think the red card is the way to go. I think that's then you take a red card, fair enough, but at least then, if you're not punished in that game, you'll be punished in the next. I think that's the way to go, I think, Gerry, to be honest. If I was doing that, I think then sin bin is a good idea as well. But I think sin bin should be the clock should be stopped. I think that would be my way I do it, to be honest. I think the way to do it in the rugby and ladies football is a lot better than the way it's probably being done at the moment, where you can be sin bin for 10 minutes, but it doesn't matter if someone's down injured for 10 minutes, it's still the same thing. But I think there's an awful lot of pressure on the referee with all these rules, especially the advanced mark and all these rules as well. So look, that's probably I suppose the facts are Mayo are in a Connacht champions and an All-Ireland semi-final now, and only that can't really be taken away from them, I suppose, at the moment. And I think for Galway, it's a case now, I suppose they did survive in Division 1, which was probably their main aim. Well, no, it wasn't their main aim, but that was one of their targets for the year. They've succeeded in that, so they didn't succeed in getting to it, in winning a Connacht championship. But look, I suppose there's always next year, and I suppose Galway have been unlucky with the format, as I meant, or not with the format, but with the way the ball has bounced in the last 2 weeks. I think it's important for Padraig Joyce that they stay together and they try and build, and then next year they come again and they are keep improving and try and win a Connacht title next year, maybe.
Okay, so we'll go up to Ulster, and before we get on to one of what was a really great finish to the game and stuff. We'll start off with Donnygal, who were very comfortable winners over Armagh, 122 to 13 points on Saturday afternoon. So are Donnygal really good, or were Armagh not as good?
It's hard to know, Jerry. I'd nearly go with Donnygal being very good, to be honest. I think Donnygal were very, very good in the day. I think that they played some excellent football throughout the game. I think Donnygal have been building for the last 3 years. Declan Boner and I suppose Carl Lacey and Stephen Rochford, and they've got built a very, very good management team there and a very, very good group of players. I think that now, 2 years ago and last year, maybe to an extent, they would have been overly reliant on Michael Murphy, but that's definitely not the case anymore. So I think Donnygal, they were very, very good at the weekend. They just kept piling on the points in the first half, and then when the goal chance kind of came to kill the game, they took the goal chance. It was kind of similar to what Dublin do to teams, Jerry, to be honest. And I was really, really impressed with Donnygal. And I think Armagh will be very, very disappointed with their performance. So no, definitely on the other hand. But I think Donnygal, I think now that their target and the target for the management team now, the challenge for them this week will be just to get the players thinking about Cavan. There's no way they can be thinking about Dublin. You know that kind of way, Jerry. Jim McGuinness made a very good point in the Sky. Now, he was really talking about that playing down. People thought he might be playing down. But in 2013, when McGuinness in his third year, Donnygal were going for 3 Ulsters in a row, and they were reigning All-Ireland champions, and everyone kind of thought that, again, they were in the Ulster final, they had beaten Tyrone, and everyone kind of thought they were talking about Donnygal again going beyond and beyond. And then Monaghan took them in the Ulster final, and Monaghan bet them fairly well that day. So Donnygal and Cavan are kind of coming into that game probably in a similar-ish position to where Monaghan were that year. You know that kind of way, Jerry. So I think that the challenge for Donnygal now is to not overlook Cavan this weekend. They have to go and win that game first before they can even think about Dublin.
Okay, and obviously on Cavan then, basically three championship matches this season, and they haven't really kicked the ball in the first 35 minutes of any of them, and there they are in an Ulster final with 3 fantastic second half performances. Obviously a big comeback against Monaghan, big comeback against Down, and the game against Antrim, they were, I think, a point behind at half time and come back and won that fairly handy. So what do you think of Cavan? You know, are they first off, so what do you think of the match, but how highly do you rate Cavan?
It's an interesting question, that, Jerry, because you're dead right. They looked like on 2 occasions against Monaghan against Down that they were heading out with the championship, and both occasions they've dug deep and got the win. And I don't know, I just think that Cavan, it's hard to know what level they're at, and I keep making this point, but I think it's been a bad year for Cavan, Jerry, because they got relegated in the league to Division 3, which is not where they want to be long term. I kind of say Westmeath, similar when Tom Crippen was manager in 2015 and 2016, Westmeath got relegated from Division 2 to Division 4. But both of those years, Westmeath got to Leinster finals. Now, they didn't compete with Dublin really either year, but Cavan are kind of similar. They've got to 2 Ulster finals while getting relegated twice. And Mickey Graham has been manager for 2 years, Jerry, and he suffered 2 relegations, but he's won more games in his 2 years in charge. He's won 5 games in the Ulster Championship. And that's more games than Cavan won in the competition from 2006 to 2018. So he's done an absolutely fantastic job in charge, as Mickey Graham, as manager at Cavan, in the championship. And he's done probably not such a great job in the league, you know, that kind of way. But I think being in Division 2 in the league is important to Cavan, Jerry, to be honest. So I think that's disappointing. But just to go back in the match, from what I saw, Down had the game absolutely won home and hose, and were playing some great football Down were. And then Down managed to lose the match then, somehow. But Down would be very, very disappointed to lose that match. But as I said to you the previous week, I don't think Cavan got enough credit for the win against Antrim, Jerry. I think that they actually had to dig deep and win against Antrim. I think everything was going in Antrim's favour. Antrim had the belief. Antrim were set up hard to beat and everything. And Cavan had to dig deep. They were kept getting a few setbacks with the black cards. And they went and they won that match, Jerry, fairly well. They scored 13 points and won it 13-9. And I think that was really the match to kind of show that Cavan are not a bad team. You know, kind of the 3 matches they've had to go to now, they've had to win them all in different ways. And the common denominator is that they've managed to win all 3 of them. Now, do I think they're going to beat Donnygal? I don't, Jerry, to be honest. I think Donnygal are going to beat them with a good bit to spare. But I think that Cavan, they can go into this game with a small bit of belief, having that, especially if things go bad, if they go 6 or 7 points down, that they know they're kind of not out of the game. You know what I'm saying, Jerry?
Yeah, absolutely. They'll there's no doubt about it. Like, they, you know, for Donnygal to beat them, it's nearly like they'll have to kill them. Do you know what I mean? It's like no matter how many down they are, they just seem to, you know, there's a belief there that, you know, this game's not over, and all of a sudden, certainly, their second half performances have been outstanding, which, is obviously a testament to the coaching and the fitness too, probably. So obviously that'll be a good, interesting match. Probably, we'll discuss that again, but certainly I would agree with you. That Donnygal should be favourites, but I think certainly 2 out of the 3 weeks I've wrote Cavan off, so I'll refrain from maybe doing that again. So we'll go to Leinster, and before I talk about a match that thought was very interesting, we'll get on to another stroll in the park for the Dubs, 223 to 7 points. The game was it was a good game up until the water break, and then the Dubs just went up a gear and blew them away. So, what do you think? Just another professional performance from the Dubs.
Well, this might sound stupid, Gerry, or this may, but I didn't actually. I actually watched the first 25 minutes of this before I switched on the Munster hurling final, and from what I saw, Dublin did not look good at all. They looked like they were sloppy with the kickouts, which was completely unusual. And Laois had missed an awful lot of chances, so Laois actually could have been Laois were actually well in this game for a long period of the game. Now, I don't really rate Laois as a team, to be honest, Gerry. I don't really think that they played fantastic all year, so I'm not a bit surprised by the full-time manner. I think that Dublin probably got ahead, and Laois players probably, I won't say they gave up, but they probably got a bit disheartened, which is probably completely understandable considering the circumstances in Dublin, etc. But I think that if Dublin can play like that against Meath for the first 25 minutes, Meath have scored 12 goals in their last 2 games, so it could be a different story you put in. I think certainly down the line, Dublin will have to improve. I don't think Dublin are going as well as they have been in previous years, but yet, Gerry, I still think they're probably the best team in the country at the moment still. Do you know what kind of way? I just think Dublin, I suppose at the end of the day, for Dessie Farrell, when he looks at it, he said it himself, he wouldn't have been happy with the first half performance, but a 22-point win in the Leinster semi-final is nothing to be complaining about. And I don't think Laois were ever going to have any chance of winning that game, Gerry, to be honest. So I think that while this Dublin team, what they've done great all the years, is that they've always, well, one thing is maintained a consistent level of performance, but they've never seemed to take a team for granted. And I think that because of that, but because they have done that, they seem to always have got to a position where they're just so far ahead of teams. I think just Dessie Farrell probably knows that they won't be taking things for granted, kind of, so I don't think a shock was ever on the cards yesterday, to be honest with you. But again, a bit like Dessie Farrell, now this is one thing Dublin have done, as Kate mentioned, but he won't have probably the same trouble in getting his players to think Mead this week. He won't be having the last thing they wanted to be thinking about Donnygal, and I think if they have to do that, they probably should do a professional job against Mead this weekend and get over the line, but he has to be thinking purely about Mead. They can't let any thoughts about Donnygal get to their head before the weekend. Now, Dublin haven't traditionally over the last year, so it shouldn't be a challenge, but I suppose just going back to that Meath and Kildare game now, we'll go on to that. It was 5-9, 15 points to Meath. Kildare, I saw the first half of that game, and Kildare were playing good football. They were well the better team, and they were dominant. Flipped over to Galway Mayo, and then when that game was at half time, and the second half, Meath just destroyed Kildare. They got the goals early, and then I suppose they got the 2 goals in the first 4 minutes of the half, and that kind of left it a level game when Kildare were well on top. And then Meath got the 3rd goal then, and it was Kildare were still well in the game, there wasn't much, and then the 4th goal was a bit sloppy, and then from there was only going to be one winner. But Meath are after scoring 12 goals in the last 2 games, and like Shane Walsh playing good football front, Jordan Morris playing well. I think Meath have they're making some improvements, Gerry. Now, whether it'll be enough to compete with Dublin, I don't know, but the improvements Meath are making has just been absolutely fantastic in this season. Like, they haven't, I'd say they had 2 targets this year, Meath. One was to stay up in Division 1. They didn't do that. The other one was to get to a Leinster final. They have done that. But I'd give them a pass in Division 1 because I think why they didn't stay up, they learned an awful lot from playing in Division 1. I think they improved an awful lot to the team from playing in Division 1. And I think that it's important for Meath and Kildare even to consolidate themselves as the second best team in Leinster before consolidating themselves as the first best team in Leinster. And this is the 2nd year in a row now Meath have got to a Leinster final. So I think they're going in the right direction in that sense. But I think Kildare, the last 10 years since 2009, they've been in 1 Leinster final. And a lot of people would consider them the second best team in Leinster in that period, apart from Dublin. But the facts say otherwise, because Meath have been in six Leinster semi-finals in that period, and Leinster finals even in that period, since Kildare have been in 1. because they've been in 1, Meath have been in 6. So Meath have a far better record in championship football than Kildare in recent seasons. And I just think Meath going into this weekend, every one of those players has to think that they can beat Dublin this weekend. Like, Meath have to stop thinking about moral victories. They've had a good year, and I don't think they're going to beat Dublin, but they should have absolutely no reason to fear that it'll be an absolute cakewalk like it was another year, sure.
Yeah, I think obviously the big thing, and you've touched on it there, is 12 goals in 2 games, and I think if you're going to beat the Dubs, you need to be you need to be raising the green flag, and the Dubs are obviously they always seem to be a wee bit under pressure, and then all of a sudden the goals come out, and I think you probably look at it when we 5-9 against Kildare, and realistically to beat the Dubs, they're probably going to need every one of them 24 points. Do you know what I mean? So that they do have to come out on the front foot. And but certainly, if you can hit the back of the net, obviously it's a different score on goals against Wicklow and Kildare. But if you can get 2 goals and be consistent, try not to hit too many frees, you can put up a good score and make really push Dublin. So it'll be certainly another really interesting match. I was watching that. I watched a good bit of that game, and I was fascinated by it. Just every time Meath went forward, it felt like they were going to score. And like 5-9. I did, whenever I was watching it at the time, I didn't even realise that they had scored as few as 9 points. It just felt like they kind of went away, and the last goal was kind of, obviously Kildare were pushing up by, I think they were 6 behind at that stage, and yeah, it was a very interesting match. So obviously we'll have some big finals this week. They probably all got a heavy favourite in them, but we'll hopefully you'll join me later in the week, and we'll preview those.
Yeah, that's perfect, Gerry. Thanks very much for having me on the show, I suppose, and yeah, hopefully everyone enjoyed the games this weekend.
Yeah. As I say, it's always a pleasure to have you on. So my thanks to Conor, and as I say, we'll be back later in the week. We're obviously down to the finals, and then semi-finals and finals. So there's not too much more football matches to be played, but all along the football championship has been win or go home. So it's led to some fascinating encounters, and hopefully we have a few more ahead of us. So my thanks to everybody for watching, and thanks again, as always, to Conor for bringing all the knowledge to the show. So thank you.